The echo in the jungle. The jungle was alive with strange sounds, chirps, growls, and a low humming noise that seemed to come from the trees themselves. Mason moved slowly, his boots sinking into the soft, mossy ground. His hands were dirty, gripping his scanner tightly. The sky above was a dull orange hidden behind layers of thick fog. It wasn't Earth. It was nowhere near it. This was Carthon 7, an uncharted alien planet on the edge of human exploration. He was here alone. No backup, no orders. Just a map, a signal, and his instincts. Mason had spent weeks scavenging through wrecked pods, abandoned tech, and ancient alien ruins, hoping to find something valuable. But tonight, something was different. He stopped. There it was again. A sound. Not an animal, not mechanical. A scream, short, sharp, human-like. Then silence. Mason's heartbeat picked up. He turned off his scanner, crouched low, and listened. The scream echoed again, this time louder, and it was followed by low, guttural laughter. Several voices. He slid down a muddy slope, brushed aside thorny vines, and moved toward the sound. As he pushed through a thick patch of glowing blue plants, he saw it. A clearing. A large fire burned in the center, lighting up the trees in red and gold. Around it stood a group of tall, muscular aliens, skin grayish-black, faces hidden by bone masks, and strange symbols painted on their bodies. They moved in a circle, chanting, in a language he couldn't understand. Some banged drums made of metal and skin. Others waved long spears carved from stone. But Mason's eyes went straight to the center of the circle, tied to a large wooden pole, a young alien girl. She looked different, smaller, not like the others. Her skin was a pale violet. Her eyes, large and glowing faintly blue. Her arms were burned, her clothes torn. She was shaking. Mason's grip tightened on his plasma knife. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. He stepped back into the shadows and watched. One of the tribal aliens walked up to her and shouted something. He raised a curved blade, sharp and cruel. The fire roared louder as if feeding on her fear. The girl's lips moved, but no words came out. Instead, she looked directly at Mason's hiding spot. Her eyes blinked, 3 times quickly, then once, then again. Mason froze. That wasn't random. Morse code. She was trying to say something. He focused hard. The blinking continued. H-E-L-P. Mason cursed under his breath. This wasn't just a savage ceremony. She was intelligent, a survivor, maybe a prisoner of war, and she was about to die. He scanned the clearing again. No guns, only bone weapons, primitive armor, and wild chanting. But there were at least 10 of them. He couldn't take them all, head on. Then he remembered the mini-charge in his pouch. It wasn't powerful, but loud enough to make a distraction. He pulled it out, pressed the timer, and threw it toward the far side of the clearing, into the dense trees. Tick, 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 boom. The explosion was loud, throwing dirt and sparks into the sky. The aliens roared in surprise and panic. Some ran toward the blast. Others looked around in confusion. That was his moment. Mason rushed forward, knife in hand. He cut the ropes, holding the girl's arms, catching her before she collapsed. She was weak, barely conscious. "Hold on," he whispered. "I got you." She looked at him through half-lidded eyes. A single tear ran down her cheek, mixing with the soot on her face. "Don't talk," Mason said, lifting her in his arms. "Let's get you out of here." But as he turned to run, a loud growl behind him. One of the tribal aliens hadn't been fooled. He raised his spear and charged. Mason ducked just in time. The spear missed, but another alien appeared. Then, another. The whole camp was waking up. Mason looked at the jungle, then at the girl. "I hope you can hold on," he muttered, and he sprinted, into the darkness, into the wild unknown, carrying the alien girl as the screams of angry warriors followed, behind. The fire circle and the silent code mason didn't stop running until his lungs begged for air. Branches scraped his face. Thorns tore his sleeves. The alien girl was slipping in and out of consciousness, her weight heavy in his arms. Behind him, tribal howls echoed, wild, furious, growing closer. He dove behind a fallen tree, breathing hard. The jungle was thicker, here darker. Giant leaves hung like curtains, and strange, glowing bugs floated lazily around them. For a few seconds, it was quiet. Too quiet. Mason pulled out his sidearm, a low-charged shock blaster, almost dead on energy. Just great. The girl coughed weakly. "You still alive?" he whispered, looking down at her. She blinked slowly. Then, again, she blinked in that strange pattern. Not random. 3 blinks. 1. Then 2. Mason narrowed his eyes. Morse code. Again, S-T-A-Y. Stay? Why? Before he could ask, he heard it. A low chant. Not behind them now, ahead. His blood turned cold. "They're surrounding us," he muttered. This wasn't a chase, it was a trap. The aliens were driving him somewhere, herding him like prey. And he had walked right into it. He looked at the girl. She blinked once more, fast and urgent. TRAP. She knew. She'd been through this before. Mason lowered her to the ground gently. "Okay, listen. If they want us to go a certain way, we go the other." He scanned the jungle. Most of it looked like an endless mess of green and black. But then, he spotted it. A small, broken path, almost invisible. Crushed undergrowth. Footprints. Someone else had run this way recently. He slung the girl over his back, adjusted his grip on the blaster, and moved. Fast. Silent. As they crept through the thick jungle, Mason's mind was racing. Who was she? Why? Did she know Morse code? And why were these aliens treating her like a criminal or a sacrifice? After 30 minutes of careful steps and silent crawling, he reached a narrow ridge. Below it was a wide clearing, and in the center, another fire. But this time, no tribe. No girl tied to a post. Instead, there were 3 other aliens, smaller, like her, lying motionless on the ground. Burn marks on their skin, metal cuffs on their arms, and something else. A large symbol carved into the dirt. It glowed faint red, like a summoning circle. Mason crouched low, watching. The girl groaned. He turned to her. "Those your people?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. Her voice was weak, but she managed to whisper, "They call us ghost children. We were born different." He leaned in. "Different how?" "Not slaves. Not warriors. Thinkers. My mind can speak to machines. They hate it." Mason stared at her. "So that's why she used code. That's why she wasn't burned alive yet. They wanted to do something worse. They fear us," she said. "Fear what we might awaken." Mason clenched his jaw. "What's your name?" She looked up. "Kalira." "Well, Kalira," he said, loading his last energy cell. "You're not dying tonight." Suddenly, a branch snapped behind them. Mason spun. Too late. A bone dart shot past his head, slicing his cheek. A masked warrior stepped into view, taller than the rest, holding a long, curved blade that hummed with strange energy. Kalira whimpered. "That's their Bloodseeker. Once he finds you, he doesn't stop." The Bloodseeker raised his hand, and, from the trees, more warriors dropped down. Mason didn't hesitate. He fired once. The bolt hit a tree and exploded in a burst of blue sparks. The warriors hesitated, just long enough. He grabbed Kalira and leapt off the ridge, rolling down a steep hill into darkness. As they tumbled, Mason heard Kalira whisper, "They're not just hunters. They're protectors of something. Something buried in this jungle." They landed hard in a river, water cold and fast. Mason surfaced, gasping. Kalira floated beside him, eyes shut. He pulled her to the shore. Above them, the Bloodseeker stood at the top of the hill, watching, waiting. Mason looked up at him, rage building in his chest. "Come then," he muttered. "Let's see if you bleed." Into the mouth of shadows. The river was silent now. Only the moon, large and blood-red, watched from above. Mason dragged Kalira onto the muddy shore, his muscles aching from the fall. She coughed, spitting out water, still alive. Barely. But they had no time. Up the hill, the Bloodseeker still stood unmoving, watching. He wasn't just a warrior, he was something else. A hunter built to track minds, not footsteps. Mason didn't wait for him to move. He picked Kalira up again and stumbled into the thick jungle ahead. This time the trees grew too close together, like they didn't want to let anyone pass. The air turned cold, heavy. Even the insects were gone. It felt like they had stepped into a different world. Kalira stirred. "Where are we?" "I was about to ask you that," Mason muttered. She tried to sit up. "This part of the jungle isn't forbidden even to them." "Why?" She looked around, eyes wide with fear. "Because things sleep here. Things older than the tribe." Mason paused. Then he saw it. A giant stone statue half buried in the ground. An alien face carved with thousands of tiny runes. Its eyes were missing, torn out long ago. The trees had grown around it, swallowing it whole. Kalira touched one of the runes. It glowed faintly. "The ancients," she whispered. This jungle was theirs. Mason wasn't in the mood for ghost stories, but even he could feel it, the wrongness in the air. His skin prickled. He checked his blaster. One charge left. One. Suddenly the trees behind them rustled. Heavy footsteps. Not running. Walking. The Bloodseeker had entered the forbidden zone. Kalira looked horrified. "He shouldn't be here." "Yeah, well, I shouldn't either," Mason said. "But here we are." Then she said something that made his blood run cold. "If he dies here, something else might wake up." They pushed deeper, hoping the jungle would lose the hunter in its twisting paths. But Mason stopped when he saw it. A wall of alien roots weaved into an archway. Beyond it, complete darkness. No sounds, no stars above. Kalira touched the arch. The roots parted like they were alive. Mason raised a brow. "That's not creepy at all." Inside was a chamber, underground, ancient, glowing softly with strange blue crystals. Tech and nature fused together. Half a ship, half a temple. In the center was a machine humming faintly. Broken, but still breathing. "What is this place?" Mason asked. Kalira smiled faintly. "A place they forgot, but I remember." She limped toward the machine, her fingers moving like she was remembering something buried deep in her blood. Then she said, "I can restart it, but it will take time." Mason nodded. "Then I'll buy you that time." He stood at the tunnel's entrance, eyes scanning the darkness outside. Then a whisper, not from Kalira, not from the jungle, it came from the machine. "You brought her back," it said in a voice that wasn't a voice. Mason stepped back, blaster ready. "What the hell is that?" Kalira didn't answer. Her eyes had turned pure white, her hands glowing as she connected with the core. The ground trembled. Outside, the Bloodseeker had arrived. He stepped into the archway, then stopped. The forest didn't want him here. The vines snapped toward him like snakes. He roared and burned through them with his blade, stepping inside. Mason raised the blaster. "You take one more step, and I swear." The Bloodseeker laughed, not with his mouth, but inside Mason's head. "You think she's a girl?" the voice said. "She's a key." Then everything went white. Mason awoke with a jolt. The Bloodseeker was gone. Kalira stood at the center of the room, floating slightly, the machine glowing behind her. The jungle had gone silent. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "The machine listened. It gave us a path, a way out." He looked around. Behind the machine, a new tunnel had opened. Smooth metal walls. Lights. Old human tech. "What is this?" Kalira turned to him, her voice stronger now. A forgotten route to the last skyport. If we reach it, we can leave this planet. Mason raised an eyebrow. And the Bloodseeker? She looked back toward the archway. Trapped in the roots of the jungle, for now. Mason sighed. One problem solved, 1,000 more waiting. She gave him a tired smile. Welcome to my world. And together, they walked into the tunnel, leaving the mouth of shadows behind. The whispering tunnel. The tunnel walls pulsed with dim blue light, as if alive. Every step Mason took echoed back a second too late, like something else was walking with them. But when he turned, only Kalira walked beside him, barefoot, silent, glowing faintly from whatever the ancient machine had done to her. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. The deeper they went, the less the place felt like a tunnel and more like a vein, like they were walking through the inside of something once living. The floor was smooth like melted metal. The air was thick, humid and humming with a quiet sound. Not a machine hum. A voice. Whispers. Hundreds of them. Mason gripped his blaster tighter. You hear that? He asked. Kalira nodded. Echoes of memory. The ancients recorded their pain into the walls. Well, Mason muttered, they should have kept it to themselves. After 20 minutes of walking, the tunnel opened into a wide dome, a broken command center. Screens covered the walls, cracked, some flickering with static. A huge window showed the jungle outside, though they were now far above the ground. The structure had somehow risen from underground and merged with the mountain itself. Kalira walked toward a dead console and touched it. The machine responded. Soft clicks, and then a projection appeared in the air. It showed a planet-wide purge. Fires, screaming, ships falling from the sky. The tribal aliens, younger and more civilized, were the ones doing the destruction. They weren't always like this, Kalira said. They used to build, create, until fear made them monsters. Fear of what? She turned to him, her expression cold. People like me. Before Mason could ask more, a loud thud echoed through the tunnel they came from. Then another. The walls shivered. No, Kalira whispered. It can't be. Mason raised his blaster. What now? She looked at the projection, then back, at the door. They didn't just trap the Bloodseeker, they woke something else. Suddenly a scream echoed from the tunnel. Not human, not alien. Something ancient, layered, wrong. Mason's heart pounded. I don't suppose there's a back door in here? Kalira pointed to another tunnel hidden behind broken machinery. Through there, but it's unfinished. Dangerous. He nodded. Danger's the only thing we've got left. They ran. The second tunnel was different. Cold, metallic, darker. Strange lights flickered like strobe flashes, showing glimpses of something crawling through the ceiling vents. Mason didn't look up. He just ran faster, pulling Kalira behind him. The walls around them whispered again, this time clearer. You brought her. You brought the key. You broke the seal. Kalira clutched her head, screaming in pain. Mason stopped, held her. What's happening? She gasped. The voices. They're trying to rewrite me. Pull memories out. Use me to unlock something terrible. Mason didn't understand half of it, but he understood pain. Fight it, he said. You're
not theirs, you're with me now.
Her breathing slowed, the whispers faded. Then they reached it. The exit. A wide stone platform hanging off the side of a cliff opened before them. Beyond it, a long rope bridge stretched over an impossible drop, miles down into darkness. On the other side, a landing pad, broken but still usable, and beside it, a small ancient human shuttle, old, rusted, but possibly flight-worthy. Mason exhaled. That's our ride. Kalira touched the bridge. The structure is unstable, we go. One at a time. You first, he said. She nodded and began walking across the bridge slowly. But halfway through, the whispering screamed, and something crashed into the tunnel behind Mason. A creature. Not the Bloodseeker. Bigger. Older. With a face made of shifting metal and eyes that burned like stars. It moved like a shadow crawling over reality. Mason didn't move. If it chased her, it would kill her. So he made a choice. He raised his blaster and fired at the supports behind him, collapsing the entrance. Dust. Fire. Silence. Kaylira screamed, "No!" But Mason stood on the broken edge, coughing, alive. He turned to her with a smirk. "Run, princess." The burning skypath. The bridge swayed like it was breathing. Kaylira stood frozen in the middle, the planks beneath her feet creaking with every gust of wind. Behind her, the jungle burned red in the distance, smoke rising like ghosts. Below, nothing but black. A bottomless drop, and at the other side of the bridge, Mason. Bloody, breathing hard, but alive. He had blown the tunnel behind him to seal the ancient creature in, but something inside that explosion had changed him. His eyes were colder now, focused, like he'd accepted something. She took a shaky breath and moved, step by step. When she finally reached him, she didn't speak. "She just fell into his arms. You could have died," she whispered. "Would have made things easier," Mason said, half smiling. "But I'm not done protecting you yet." They turned toward the ancient landing pad. The shuttle sat like a dead beast. Dusty, rusted, tilted to one side. The paint had faded long ago. Strange alien vines wrapped around its rear engine like it was being claimed by the planet. Mason stepped inside first. The metal groaned beneath his boots. The interior was dark but not dead. Lights flickered on, weak and blue. He tapped the control panel. Beep. One engine functional. Navigation systems, corrupted. Fuel cells, low, but enough for one short jump. He leaned back and whistled. "We've got one shot." Kaylira entered behind him. She looked around, her hand brushing over the worn seats and cracked screens. "This model, it's pre-collapse," she said softly. "Built by humans before the wars." Mason looked at her. "You've seen one before?" She didn't answer. She just sat in the pilot's seat and powered up the ship like she'd done it 100 times. As the engine coughed to life, a loud howl came from the cliffs behind them. Mason stepped outside the ship and saw them. The tribal aliens. At least 20. Maybe more. All armed, all screaming, and leading them. The Bloodseeker. His armor was cracked, his mask half burned, but his eyes glowed brighter than ever. Pure white fire. He had escaped the jungle's trap. Mason ran back into the shuttle. "They found us, and he's not done." Kaylira's fingers flew across the console. "I need 30 seconds. "We have 10. Outside, the aliens charged forward. Spears flew. One shattered against the shuttle's glass. Mason grabbed an old turret mounted under the front. He hadn't fired one since the siege of Arcturus, but muscle memory kicked in. He aimed. He pulled the trigger. Boom. The first wave fell, but more came, unstoppable, screaming their god's name. "Kaylira, now would be a good time to fly," he shouted. "Engines are spooling. Hold them off." Another spear flew. It pierced his shoulder. Mason didn't cry out. He just pulled it out and kept firing. Blood ran down his arm. His vision blurred. Then, lift off. The shuttle rose, slow and shaking. Fire burst from its single, working engine. The landing pad cracked below them. Mason collapsed beside Kaylira, barely conscious. "Get us off this rock." She didn't hesitate. With one last command, she punched the thrusters. The shuttle shot into the sky, breaking through the black clouds, leaving the screams and fire behind. For a moment, there was silence. Just stars. Inside the ship, Kaylira turned toward Mason. He was pale, breathing slow. She wrapped a cloth around his shoulder and whispered something in her own language. A blessing. A thank you. A prayer. He opened one eye and said, "So, where are we going?" "There's a place," she replied. "A hidden moon. My people call it the sanctuary. If we make it there, we can end this war." Mason smirked. "Good. I'm getting tired of running." Kalira looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. "You're not just a scavenger, are you?" He didn't answer, but in his eyes. The past was waking up. Ghosts on the moon, the stars outside the shuttle window spun like slow sparks in a black ocean. Kalira sat in silence. Her hands rested on the ship's controls, but her eyes stayed fixed on the small glowing dot ahead. The moon they were heading toward. Not just any moon. Sanctuary. It looked dead from a distance. Gray, cracked, half covered in dust. But beneath, the surface, something powerful was sleeping. Something ancient. Something her blood remembered. Behind her, Mason was strapped to the medbed. His shoulder was bandaged and he looked half-conscious. But his mind was elsewhere, locked in memory, 12 years earlier. Mason stood in a burning corridor surrounded by screaming children and dead scientists. The walls of the secret research facility collapsed around him as he dragged a small, purple-skinned girl in his arms. She was blinking in code, crying without sound, just like Kalira. The order had been clear. Destroy everything. Leave no survivors. But he hadn't followed orders that day. He'd taken the girl, hidden her, lied to his commanders. That little alien child had vanished. The facility was buried, the project forgotten, until now. Mason opened his eyes, barely breathing. "I've been here before." Kalira turned, surprised. "You remember Sanctuary?" He nodded slowly. "I was a soldier back then. We thought this place was a threat, but I saw the truth." Kalira looked shaken. "Then you know what sleeps here?" Mason's voice dropped. "Something we buried. Something we thought was safe." The ship beeped. They were entering the moon's gravity. She took the controls and brought them down gently. Dust exploded around them as the shuttle touched the ground. No movement. No light. Just stone and silence. But Kalira stood. "Follow me." "I know the Polyak." They stepped into the moon's surface, a wasteland of glass and ash. But Kalira walked with certainty. Her feet led them to a flat stone, smooth as mirror. She knelt and pressed her palm against it. The ground rumbled. The stone sank, revealing a staircase of white metal. Light bloomed below. Mason followed without a word. They descended deep underground where no jungle reached, where no tribal scream could follow. The chamber below was circular, wide, and glowing with soft golden light. Pillars lined the walls, each one humming faintly. In the center, a crystal throne untouched by time. Kalira approached it like a daughter returning home. "This is the heart of the sanctuary," she whispered. "And this is where I end it." Mason frowned. "End what?" She turned to him. "My memories were locked, my powers suppressed, but now the seal is breaking." She reached into a compartment in her chest, something not visible to the eye, and pulled out a thin shard of living crystal. It pulsed with her heartbeat. The ancients gave this to my bloodline, a weapon, a message, a choice. She placed the shard in the throne. It lit up instantly. Above them, a giant hologram bloomed, dozens of alien worlds, data streams, warnings, and one phrase blinking in red. Inheritor detected. Armament authorization in progress. Mason stepped back. "Wait, armament? What does that mean?" Kalira's voice was calm but sad. "If I choose yes, this moon will wake. Its weapons will activate. Every tribal hive across the galaxy will burn." Mason clenched his fists. "And if you don't, they'll come. Again. And next time they'll bring more than bone spears." He stared at her. "So, genocide or extinction?" Kalira's eyes shimmered. "That's the choice they left me." Mason didn't speak for a long time, then he stepped forward. There's a third option. She looked at him. You don't have to burn them all. Just wake enough to make them run. Her breath caught. That's a gamble. Mason smiled. Yeah, but I've always been good at those. She sat on the throne. The light wrapped around her like fire and silk. The crystal shard floated up, spinning faster and faster, and the moon woke. Not in rage, not in death, but in warning. Towers rose from the ground above. Signals fired into space, and from deep beneath, machines powered up with ancient language. Proof of power. No need. To destroy, let them fear. Kalyra stood tall, her skin glowing like starlight. She had chosen mercy. Outside, the jungle world paused. The Bloodseeker, wherever he stood, felt the moon's voice in his bones. His warriors dropped their weapons and knelt, for the key had returned. And this time, she wasn't alone. The key and the war drum. The moon was no longer asleep. From its surface, silent towers blinked with signals no one had seen in centuries. Energy pulses stretched across the stars, speaking in a language only the oldest machines could hear. Below, in the golden chamber, Kalyra stood on the throne platform, glowing like the daughter of a dying star. And Mason, he stood behind her, quiet, watching. He wasn't a hero, not really. But in that moment, he looked like one. The crystal core that had floated above Kalyra's hand now pulsed calmly, no longer threatening destruction. Her gamble had worked. The sanctuary had awakened, not to destroy but to warn. Across the galaxy, tribal warships halted mid-flight. Their leaders heard the signal and shivered. It was the sound of a forgotten empire, reminding them who built the stars. For the first time in 100 years, they hesitated. Kalyra collapsed. Mason caught her before she hit the ground. Her body was burning hot, energy still flowing through her veins. I'm okay, she whispered. No, you're not, he muttered. You just turned a dead moon into a space god. She smiled weakly. Only because you told me to try. He carried her back through the winding tunnels of the sanctuary, up the white steps, out onto the surface of the moon. The air was thinner now, but still breathable. Above them, the tribal ships were retreating, scattering like dust. Mason placed her gently onto the ground, the shuttle just behind them. She looked up at him, eyes soft. They're afraid now, he nodded. As they should be. But fear doesn't bring peace, she said. It just makes them strike later. Mason knelt beside her. Then we keep striking first, until they get tired, or until someone smarter takes power. She closed, her eyes. You think that's possible? He smirked. I think anything's possible when a girl who was supposed to be a sacrifice wakes up a whole moon with her heartbeat. She sat up slowly, the last of the energy fading from her skin. And then she said something that made Mason's expression go still. My father was human. He blinked. What? I never knew him. My mother said he was a soldier, a good man. He saved her during the early days of the war. But he disappeared before I was born. Mason stared at her, his voice low. Was his name Connor Ryde? Her breath caught. How do you know that name? He looked away. Because I served with him. Silence fell between them. Mason stood, brushing dust from his jacket. Your father didn't abandon you, he said. He died protecting this moon. Kalyra's eyes filled with tears. You knew him? Better than anyone, Mason whispered. He was the one who told me not all aliens were enemies. She looked at him, something glowing behind her tears. And now I'm his legacy? Mason smiled softly. No, you're something bigger. Your hope. From the shuttle, a message began to beep. A signal. Someone was responding. Kalyra rushed inside and opened the comms. A woman's voice crackled through. This is Captain Mora of the Outer Ring Rebellion. We received your activation pulse from Sanctuary. Please confirm. Who triggered it? Kalera looked at Mason. He nodded. She leaned toward the mic. My name is Kalera. I'm the daughter of two worlds, and I've just woken up. Silence. Then, Kalera, you have no idea how long we've waited for you. The stars above the moon shimmered, and far away in the cold halls of tribal command ships, alarms continued to ring. But none of them dared move. The key had returned, and standing beside her, gun in hand, scars on his face, was the last soldier of a forgotten war. Mason. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were symbols. As the shuttle lifted from the moon's surface, climbing back into space, Kalera whispered one final thing. This was only the beginning. Mason nodded. I know. And somewhere, in the dark silence of space, a war drum began to beat again.